Bonjour, docteur Brown. Merci d'être venu nous voir à Paris, de nous proposer en fait cette interview.
Ah, I'm very happy always to be helpful.
Donc, ce que je vous propose en fait, c'est quelques petites questions pour que tout le monde puisse comprendre le système et puis faire aussi votre connaissance.
Oui.
Alors, moi, je suis curieuse de savoir en fait quel enfant vous y étiez.
So, as a child, were you always curious about science or well being? What were your dreams? Yes, I would say I always was. I was also always interested in technology. So, computers were coming online when I was growing up, and electronic communications, and a variety of things. But I was also driven to understand how it is that we create our own suffering and what is the best way to transform that. Because there's so much possibility in living. How is it that we end up repeating these problems again and again and suffering through it?
Est-ce qu'il y a un moment marquant, en fait, dans votre parcours qui a, en fait, influencé votre carrière?
When I was young, I spent a great deal of time in Iowa, where my grandparents were. And they were friends with people who ran the county homes, as they were called then. And I remember just being there and interacting with these various people who had a number of different problems. Some were schizophrenic, some were paranoid, some were depressed, some were incoherent, dementia. And it was quite amazing to be present and be able to communicate in some way with them and to share time together. And that really struck me that it's always a person first that you're dealing with. As Harry Stack Sullivan used to say, we're all more simply human than otherwise.
Quelle est votre plus grande révélation lors du développement de Neurooptimal?
That it actually worked. Theory is one thing, but then actually having it come together and work, it was quite amazing. And the development that happened over time, it always was revealing of something, including the idea that this system was possible to actually implement and that it didn't require any other intervention or any professional involved, so that in the end, as development progressed, anyone could use it anytime with anyone, including themselves. And that's pretty amazing. It's still amazing to me today.
Qu'est-ce qui vous a poussé à penser différemment par rapport aux systèmes qui existaient déjà, des systèmes linéaires? Qu'est-ce qui vous a poussé à voir les choses autrement, différemment?
Well, a lot of people would say I always have thought differently. So it's almost like, how did I not think of this different way of doing it? But I had a very large range of teachers and influences growing up. And so it was always what's possible? What can we do? Growing up, when I did in Washington, D.C., it was the time of the new frontier with Kennedy and all of that, and NASA developing. And it didn't matter what age you were. If you could keep up with the conversation, everybody would keep talking. And so even though I was this child and I had friends who were similarly oriented to me, I had access to an awful lot of information that just wouldn't have happened otherwise. So it's always very easy for me to see the other side of something. And that was, I think, fundamental in developing Neurooptimal, not accepting the limitations. But, you know, we hear the expression frequently of think outside the box. And my response was always, there's a box.
Quand est-ce que vous avez vraiment pris conscience que Neurooptimal allait transformer des vies à grande échelle? Que vous alliez avoir un impact aussi important?
Yeah, it's it's always been amazing to me to actually watch that aspect of things, because I grew up in a time and an environment where you really didn't talk about yourself that much. You didn't want to present yourself as big or bigger than you were. And so it's been quite amazing to me to watch how this thing that I had as a dream when I was 14 years old has developed, has manifest, and is changing lives around the world. And so it's a bit incredible. It's a bit unbelievable at times. And yet, on the other hand, I keep getting these stories from people. And that's the real essence of it for me, is hearing the transformations that people report. That's the whole point. The last time we looked at the numbers of sessions run, we're probably somewhere around 8 million sessions. That's since Neurooptimal 3 came out. So that's 2018. And the fascinating part about that is that sessions. That doesn't tell us how many people, because some people have one session, some have 100. So there's no way to know exactly how many people. But we do know that we're in over 75 countries, I believe it is now, around the world. And I keep hearing stories all the time. It's just amazing.
Quel était le plus grand défi que vous avez dû relever en tant que créateur de cette technique unique?
Technology. Yes, was having computers available that were capable enough and inexpensive enough that they could be used. The kind of math that I knew and was able to use in Neurooptimal, when I first had the ideas of doing this at age 14, I did a forecast of when would that be possible. And by Moore's law, which is every 18 months, computers double in their capability and half in their cost. So calculating that out, back then, it was, okay, it's going to be about the year 2000, maybe, which at that point was 30 years away. So it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to put this idea on the shelf. And gradually over time, more and more computing came online. And I came back into the field of neurofeedback and just started evolving and pushing the field as a whole, because it's always been the technology that's held things back. So the technology that we use moment to moment and the amount of calculations that we do, that was an unheard of process, even in the early 90s, even for something as large and vast as NSA in the US. So it's quite amazing to me that everybody would tell me, no, you can't do that. It's too much. The computers can't handle that. And I would say, well, let's see. So the technology has just evolved, and it's made it all possible. Yeah.
Quand les gens en fait évoquent le système comme un système révolutionnaire, qu'est-ce que vous ressentez à ce moment-là?
It's an enormous compliment, but the system is based on practices and philosophies and approaches to life that have been around for 2,500 years. So it is based in Buddhist psychology and practice. And so, in a sense, yes, it's revolutionary. On the other hand, no, it's not. It's been around a long time. But this technology allows for anyone, anywhere, to make use of it. And that's the new thing. No teacher is involved, no senior student to help you along. That's nice, and that can be useful. But it's very much dependent on each individual who does the sessions. There's no need for someone else to make a difference for you. It's just an opportunity, and if you keep using it, life transforms.
Une autre question qui se rapproche un peu de la première, de la précédente plutôt. Votre carrière a touché énormément de vies. Il y a des moments, est-ce qu'il y a des moments plutôt où vous vous dites que vous avez accompli quelque chose de précieux?
We did a conference several years ago now out in Palm Springs, and there were people who had come, and it was under 200 people that came, closer to 100. And I remember at one point talking to that whole crowd and just realizing, okay, this is going to survive. This is going to keep going. It's not dependent just on me. There's a group of people from around the world who are committed to doing this on their own, in their own way, because of what's happened in their lives and sharing that. And that was a real amazing moment for me because it was such a long distance from being 14.
En fait, qu'est-ce qui vous motive encore à continuer et à repousser les limites dans ce domaine?
That's a very good question. Because in many ways, I think it is at its end stage of development now. I've thought for a long time since Neuroptimal 3 came out in 2018 that basically we've reached the ultimate expression of that vision from back in when I was 14. And I think that's probably true. But technology advances and it allows for all kinds of things that were not even imagined 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So it's hard to say, but a lot of the kinds of things that are being offered or implemented miss the point rather than go to the core of facilitating personal transformation and relief of suffering. And that gets captured, that movement away from that essence in the ways that it gets presented incorrectly, in my opinion, because it's not a treatment or part of a treatment. And if you present it in that context, you diminish what Neuroptimal is and what it can do. What generally happens in my experience is people come in for whatever their don't want is. I have headaches or whatever, and I don't want that. And it's not uncommon for someone to report after a number of sessions, nothing's changed. And then as you talk to them, you say, well, when was the last time that you had a headache like that? Oh, it was 3 weeks ago. Well, gee whiz, when you came in, you were having like one every day. And they say, oh, well, yeah, that's right. Oh, I guess that's changed. And you were not sleeping much. But, oh, no, I've been sleeping fine for a while. So everything changes, but it changes seamlessly, easily. So there's no big bump in the road when the change happens. So it's easy to think, no, nothing's happened, nothing's changed. Everybody learns to walk when they're young. Everybody learns to talk. Nobody actually teaches you how to walk. Parents support the child as the child explores new balance possibilities and new ways of using the body. Nobody starts just walking. You roll over, you sit up, you start to crawl. And when you first start to stand, of course, the legs are like this, right? Down you go. And when my eldest daughter was learning to walk, I wish I had a video of it. It was so cute because she learned to stand and be on next to a sofa. And the legs are a little wobbly. And after a while, she realized that she would fall. So she'd get right back up. And then she'd fall again. And she started to laugh and smile. And she got very comfortable doing that, so much so that she would pick her feet up after she would stand so she could fall, right? And just sit down. So she ended up going all the way around the living room doing that. Nobody taught her that. It was the whole system learning to explore and expand these capabilities. That's an internal process. And that's exactly what happens with Neuroptimal. We're simply giving the information to the brain real time about what just happened or what's on the edge of happening. And it's information that the central nervous system can just say, okay, do I want to do that or do I not? Do I want to let go the table or the sofa or do I not? Do I want to pick up my feet? Yes, boom. And then that becomes the joy of ultimately learning to walk on your own. Yes, the parents help, but nobody gets taught how to walk. So that's the process. The process is we help the central nervous system get its own process re-engaged, that it's buried under learnings in past situations that were very stressful or overwhelming or too much to deal with, traumatizing events, for instance. And when you learn something that allows you to survive, the brain remembers, okay, I got to survive, nothing else matters. And if I do something new, who knows? Yeah. So that's what the system does. It gets you back in touch with accessing those internal resources of resilience and flexibility.
Alors, si vous pouviez revenir à vos débuts, quel conseil vous vous donneriez à vous-même?
That's always an interesting question because you think, if I'd only known this, it'd all be different. Right? Well, it might all be different. That's right. It might never happen. What would I say? I would say keep on keeping on. I would say it's a matter of time. It's just walk the talk. And it takes time, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay. Yeah, don't push it. Just ride with it. Yeah.
Quel conseil donneriez-vous à toutes les personnes qui souhaitent découvrir et utiliser ce système?
And people frequently ask, well, how many sessions will I need? It's like how many breaths do you need for the rest of your life? You know, like, it's just kind of a funny question to ask. It's like, well, or how many yoga sessions do I need? Until you die? I don't know. You know, like how many is it enough? It's not like I'm going to say, okay, I'm really tired of breathing. Now that'll be good for another 40 years. It doesn't work that way. So walk the talk, actually do the sessions. Sometimes people ask, well, how will you know when it's time to do a session? If you don't know, it's probably already time. You know, when was the last time? Well, do another one, you know. Or frequently the others will say, well, I rely on my spouse. You know, my spouse says, okay, time to do a session, come on. You know. So walk the talk, do the sessions, because it's your own experience that really is the gift to others and the invitation for them. Nobody cares really about studies, but what they care about is life change. And if you demonstrate the life change, then they'll follow. They'll try it and see what happens. I had a woman once, this is when I lived in New York, and she was afraid of bridges. She was bridge phobic. Now, living on Long Island, you have to go across a bridge or a tunnel or a ferry boat to get to Long Island if you're not on Long Island. This was a woman who came from Connecticut. And she was so bridge phobic, she had to sit in the back seat of the car with the blindfold on and her husband driving. And then she could get across the bridge, but terrified the whole way and all of that. Anyway, the way the practice was set up, I had a little waiting room, and I looked into the waiting room to see her there each time. And I'd say, oh, come on in. I'll call her Mary for the purpose of the story. And one day I looked out and I said, oh, come on in, Mary. And she came in, she sat down, and I said, Mary, where's your husband? I didn't see him out there. And she said, oh, he didn't come again today. It's like, what do you mean he didn't come again today? Well, he didn't come last week either. Okay, how did you get here? Well, I drove. Excuse me? What do you mean you drove? Well, how did you drive? So, well, I came down the interstate, and then I came across the Throgs Neck Bridge, and I went, wait a minute. You drove yourself across the Throgs Neck Bridge, which is a huge suspension bridge, by yourself, and you didn't think that was like a big deal? I said, no, why would that be a big deal? I said, well, do you remember why you came here? And it was like, oh my God, that's right. It was because the change was so seamless for her that it was no longer almost thinkable that she could have had that problem. That was a fascinating thing fairly early on. But the other one that has always really touched me was reported by another trainer. It wasn't me personally involved in this, but there was a family that had a multiply developmentally delayed child and was 7 years old, I believe, at the time, and had never spoken, nothing. And they started doing sessions and all of that. And the one day, after a number of sessions, little girl turned to her dad and said, I love you, Daddy. First spoken language ever. Later that same day, she accidentally fell into the family swimming pool and drowned. And of course, when I heard that part of the story, I was horrified and thinking about, oh my God, what a terrible loss, what a terrible thing for the family. Here comes an email another day or so after that with the family saying, thank you for giving us back our daughter. That's, things happen. They always do. But that kind of connection and that kind of joy, even in that loss, that's life. That's life. And those two stories kind of counterbalance the whole range for me, because it's very bittersweet, obviously, but that you restore that child, that you restore the family's access to that person, that you allow that to come back to the fore, transforms everything.
Dr. Brown, merci d'avoir partagé ce moment avec nous. Merci d'avoir partagé votre vision, d'avoir répondu à ces questions. Ça a été un moment pour nous très inspirant et je vous souhaite le meilleur.
Well, thank you very much. It's what you and Said do, and what so many other trainers do, that really is the value. And just, I'm amazed by what you all do. And just, it's you spreading this around. I just happen to make the thing. but it's you, and I'm always happy to be helpful and to do what I can, because that's the whole gig. That's it.